everyone. Hello, Arts Fest. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Allison Moore. I'm the program manager for Arts Fest Alberta, and I'm thrilled to be able to welcome you to our webinar today. I'd like to start off with a land acknowledgement, and in the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth, we are going to do two land acknowledgements today. Michelle, our mentor, who is presenting actually from Halifax. So we'd like to acknowledge that she's in the Mi'kmaq, the unceded territory, ancestral homeland of the Mi'kmaq Nation. The relationship is based on a series of peace and friendship treaties between the Mi'kmaq Nation and the Crown that dates back to 1725. And in Nova Scotia, they recognize that they're all treaty people. Today, I'm presenting from Calgary, or Mohkinstsis, the traditional Treaty 7 territory and oral practices of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, as well as the Stoney Nakoda and Tsuut'ina Nations, and home of the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Just as we're starting off, I'd also like to start by thanking all of our funders. We're extremely grateful to our funders for the Arts Fest program. There's 9 different funders that are funding the program across the country, all of which are acknowledged on this slide. Across Canada, we're just so lucky to be able to have all of them, especially during this time. So today's presentation will be around 20 minutes, followed by a Q&A. And if you have any questions, please make sure to post them in the Q&A pod, not in the chat window. And we'll be doing a Q&A following Michelle's presentation. While you're waiting also, if you've just recently arrived, thank you so much and welcome. Thanks for coming. If you can please just take a moment to complete the poll. We're just trying to get it, Michelle's just trying to gauge some knowledge about who's in the room and what's on your minds today. So if you can just take a minute to complete this poll, that would be really helpful before the webinar. So I'd now like to introduce Michelle Bussey. She's the Executive Director of the Nova Scotia Community College Foundation and Alumni Relations. She joined the NSCC in December 2015 from WordSkills, where she served as the Director of Communications, Marketing, and Special Events. Over 16 years in the world skills movement, Michelle also was working remotely, so she knows all about what we've been doing and we've been adjusting to at this point. And she led the promotion and skills development and excellence through different competitions from around the world. Previously, though, as the NSCC's Director of Development, she actually led the largest fundraising campaign to date, which successfully raised $33 million. In April 2019, she assumed the role of Executive Director for the team and is now leading the team through stewardship and the next fundraising initiatives for the college. So just before Michelle starts, I'm going to unmute you, Michelle. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to end the poll here, guys, and just read out. Everybody should be able to, I believe, see the results of our poll, just so we have an idea of what's on everybody's minds this morning. So, due to the current environment, what are you most interested in chatting about today? 83% fundraising during a crisis. And then 55, 52, and 55% are communicating during a crisis, engaging your board, and rescheduling and changing operations. And our next question is, what kind of supports do you have in place during this current environment? And 83% are set up to work remote. 55% have financial reserves, and 41% with engaging board and volunteers, and 31% have set up access to move programming online. And this is my favorite question. And what's keeping you up at night right now? So what are you thinking about today? 48% are thinking about sponsors, 28% other, 17% programming, and then 3% are thinking about staff and board members. Thank you so much to everybody for participating today. And now I'd like to introduce Michelle.
Thanks for having me. So as Allison said, I will try to be as quick as I can here on the conversation part and then get right into your questions. So I just wanted to lay a little bit of the groundwork. There we go. So obviously I'll talk about the tools and techniques of communicating with stakeholders. Just like you, I work for a not-for-profit and we're in fundraising all the time as well. So the start of 2020 started for me the same way as it probably started for you, with really trying to figure out what does it look like, what new programs, what new relationships, all of that. Really optimistic, really hopeful for the year. And then coronavirus started, and now we're trying to figure out kind of what to do, what it looks like, how to be prepared, what does it mean? It's so much uncertainty. So we're all there together. So just to kind of, I'm sure everybody is familiar with this, but there's about 170,000 not-for-profits in Canada, and 85,000 of them are registered charities. So that's just to make sure that you understand that there's a lot of different people out there, a lot of different groups that are all kind of feeling the same crunch that you're feeling right now. This is my favorite saying that I've heard so far in the pandemic, that we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. So, there is going to be no one size fits all for everybody here. It's very much going to be a try and figure out and adapt, try different things, find what works best for your organization. I've also heard this a lot in different circles that I'm kind of talking with is that right now, I think we're starting to come out of it, but because there's so much that fear of safety, personal, there's mental health kind of coming into this, that food, shelter, we're seeing a lot with people hoarding different things at the grocery store, for example. So a lot of, definitely the first couple of months, everyone's really focused down in here. So this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So they're very much down in these two lower levels. I think they're starting to kind of get out of them a bit now. Which is where you'll start to see now people thinking bigger and beyond more just the food, the shelter, the health, all of those things. They'll start thinking about kind of how can they, still socialize? How can they still get their culture? How can they still kind of enjoy some of the arts and things like that? So that's where they're going to start getting into a lot of, and start looking to what you guys are doing. So when you're thinking about communicating during a crisis or a pandemic as we're in now, I think the most important thing is to understand that everybody, although again, we're all in different boats, we all know what's going on, we all understand what's going on, so you can't communicate as if you've got your head in the sand, hence this photo here. You have to really, you have to acknowledge that things are not business as usual, that they are very different right now, and that just always lead with compassion and with empathy and kind of that understanding or respect that everybody's kind of feeling it differently. So when it comes to how to communicate, again, you have to be authentic. This is not the time to go out with a very cold standard message. It's you really have to show that you're human, that you care, that you know that this is going on, and it's not really about you anymore. So when before you might have said something like, look at all the great things that we're doing, and do you want to join us? Now it's got to be like, we understand that everybody is going through something collectively here, and we want to help. And then it changed the narrative. It's just a slight change, but it's very much about that greater community good, instead of it's just about your organization or what you're going through. And so if you have good news to share, or if you've got something that you've been able to adapt or change and you really want to share that with people, I think those are the types of things that are good to get out there right now. But again, it's very important to show your human side. So when to communicate, I would say that this is going to be the time when people are going to be a little bit more open to hearing from you a bit more often, but definitely don't push it. So don't just start communicating for the sake of communicating, like only do it as needed. So if you've got a big change, or if you've done something really different, or, you haven't communicated for a while and you just kind of want to say like, hey, we're still here. We're working through some adaptations, more information's coming soon, something like that. But this is a time when, no news is not necessarily good news. You want to kind of keep them engaged. You want, especially with your partners and your sponsors, you want them to know that you're still in operation, that you're looking at ways to adapt to the current environment, and that you really hope that they'll still be there to support you when you make those changes, but kind of opening the door to say, like, let's have that conversation. let's see what you might be. You'll notice a lot of, especially the bigger companies right now, they're giving a lot more leeway in how you're spending your money, but that's, may not be forever. So just make sure that you take advantage of that by really engaging them in that relationship building, that conversation, so that it's a two-way street. And so that even though they're giving you the leeway, you're still kind of showing respect by saying, like, let's talk about this and make sure that we're within what you had envisioned for that. So what to communicate. So this is, sorry, and I know there's a lot of text on the slides, but I purposely put it there in case you wanted to kind of look at it as a resource afterwards. So like I said, it's not about you, it's about them. It's about keeping everybody engaged, updated in a very meaningful way. This is not the time that you want to kind of go out and say, give them a report about all the great things that you did last year, for example, without it, some kind of context there. So, I mean, if you're doing an annual report, then that's fine, but you should still always say, like, this is a time when it's great to look back at, when things were different or something like that. You want to make sure that you're always acknowledging that, it is not business as normal, as usual. If you are going to deviate or if you're doing anything, you want to communicate that, you want to ask permission. I think I've talked to a lot of mentees about this before, but the best way to kind of really ensure that you're getting money is to ask for advice. And the best way to get advice is to ask for money. So if you're going out there and you're engaging with some of your bigger partners or your board or your volunteers and saying, like, this is a situation we're in. Here are some ideas we have. We would really appreciate some of your advice or your counsel on this. Can we have a chat and just work through some of this? So that's one thing you can do. You can show the impact that you're having on your current environment. So again, for example, if you have been able to successfully move some of your programming online, or you've been able to open it up to help a particular audience, any of those things, those are good things to start communicating and telling people so that they know that you're kind of on it, you're on top of the things, what needs to be done, and you're willing to step up to the plate and do them. Obviously be very sensitive of the environment. I just, again, that whole, don't pretend that, it's not different, because it is. Acknowledge the change, and then make sure that, show how you're helping everybody. So if you are, thinking of moving your event from this spring to next fall or the following spring, just say that, but say it's for the better, the safety and health of everybody, all of those things. So just, again, always put it back into context of why you're doing it, to help that bigger picture, and then people will get it a lot more. So this is, if you take the red line out, that's a typical sponsorship relationship building cycle. So, you find a prospect or a potential sponsor, you kind of cultivate them, and then you kind of engage with them, recognize them, and then stewardship, and it goes round and round and round. What I'm finding right now is that a lot of companies and people, they're not quite at the stage that they want to start talking about projects or funding. So you're kind of stuck in this half of the circle right now, where you've identified some people, you're kind of in that cultivation, that relationship building, and then you're almost kind of anybody that you already had relationships with, you're in that stewardship. So you're kind of stuck in this little semicircle here, and that's okay, because the more that you invest in this side of the circle during this time, the easier this side of the circle will open up and be for you when it's back to normal. So don't be worried that you're not kind of getting any money in necessarily at this stage, because all of that work and that effort in the relationship building that you're going to do right now is going to pay off as soon as everybody's ready to start talking about sponsorship again. For your board, I don't know if everybody's had a chance to kind of go through a full cycle or a board meeting with their board since everything's been locked down, but if you can get them online, if you have someone helping them, like with IT support, or again, giving them the regular updates, just like the sponsors that you would give like regular updates about what you're doing, you want to make sure that your board is fully engaged and fully informed as those things are changing, and be open and honest, and ask them for advice, ask them for suggestions if you've kind of reached a roadblock. The more that they know about the way that you're handling it, the more confidence they're going to have in your ability to kind of lead them into the future. So communications. So if your programming is changing, so say that you're, again, you had to postpone it, you cancel it, you're moving it, you're going online, all of those things. You want to make sure that you're engaging your partners and your sponsors and your board in advance before making those decisions to seek input and advice. So you don't want to just kind of, without going to your sponsors and your partners in advance, and then they just get the communication at the same time as anyone else does, that doesn't really work, because that's not really a partnership. That's more like you're just telling them this is what you've done. What should be happening is that you're kind of engaging them in that thought process, coming up with some suggestions or solution. Ultimately, the decision is going to be yours, but it's a little bit more transparent, a little bit more of a true relationship partnership. If you kind of allow them to at least hear your train of thought of why you're going the right way you're going, and then giving them an opportunity to at least have some feedback into that process. And then keep them in the loop as you're moving through that, like, yes, we've secured a new date, or we've secured a new venue, or, great news, our online platform is ready now, and we'd like to share a sneak peek of it or something with you. Like, there's a lot of ways to keep your partners engaged throughout this. It just means that you have to kind of think of things a little differently and change your perspective. So if they do want to become part of the solution, then which hopefully they would, then it's more likely that they'll stick with you. They'll give you a little bit more leniency in how the funding is going. Maybe they'll help you increase your funding, or they'll maybe they'll help advance some of their payments if they kind of had a payment schedule with you. If they know that you need it kind of more upfront than later, then that's all the more reason to keep engaging them and keep them close, because they can help with some of that. With your team, again, I spent many years working remotely too, and it's challenging for everybody, and I'm seeing it even with my team now. I have a team of about 14, and they're all dealing with it differently. So this is just something to keep in mind, that right now in the pandemic, your physical, mental, and social kind of are all blurring together. And so you have to really work extra hard to make sure that, everybody's doing okay. And again, everybody's going to be dealing with it very differently. They're going to have different circumstances at home. And also just the capacity and the capability to do things at home is different for some people. So, just recognizing that it's stressful time, keeping them up to date as much as you can as you're knowing or learning things, and as you're working through different situations. Keep them, get them engaged in some of those conversations if you're able to, and then obviously keep them, keep reaching out to them. If you see any of your team that's in particularly starting to withdraw or get quiet or miss some meetings or asking for more time off, or, just reach out and offer whatever support and flexibility that you can to help relieve those pressure. You never know what they're going through on their side. It's a lot of people with young kids. I have 3 young kids at home, and it's really difficult working from home with 3 little kids. So, everybody's got a lot of things going on. So just give them a little bit of space and show lots of support if possible. I know this is our tagline as a country, stronger together. In Nova Scotia, we have Nova Scotia Strong, recognizing a lot of the tragedies that we've been facing with the last month or so. It's not always the easiest to kind of see it as that we are together, that we're stronger together, but everyone, everyone is in the same boat. The same storm, but different boats. We're all trying to figure out how to get through this. It's made that change process a lot quicker, a lot more clunky in some cases, but everybody wants everybody to come out the other end still in the same position. They want the companies, they want the organizations, they want the arts, they want the culture. So it just means that we have to kind of all think a little bit creatively on what that looks like. So this is just a little way to end it, but that there are brighter days ahead, that this is going to pass. We will figure out, we don't know what it'll look like or how long it'll be yet, but I think this is a really good lesson for a lot of organizations on how to, diversify some of their programming to make sure that we are online, in person, all of those things. So it'll be interesting to see what it looks like after this is all over, for sure. That's my 20 minutes or so, I guess, for the presentation. So we'll do Q&A now.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so lovely to see
You're welcome.
pictures of water and to talk about boats. I'm so jealous here in Nova Scotia right now. Thank you so much. We're so lucky to be able to have you as a mentor in our program. And yeah, we want to open everything up now to questions and answers. I know there's 43 of you online right now, so just waiting for a couple questions to come in. But that's it's all really wonderful advice, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Yeah, no problem. Maybe all my slides covered their questions.
That would be a first. I challenge ArtsFest. That would be a first if there's no questions. Yeah, in just waiting, suspense.
Oh, I'll just
Close that out.
Yeah, let me just hang on one second. Let's put it back up because I can't figure out how to close it.
Oh, I can stop your share screen. Here we go. Wow. Okay. Oh, here we go. Fantastic. I was like, that'll be a first if we have no questions. Wonderful. Thank you, guys. So our first question's from Rob. Rob, I miss you. Hello. Hello. Rob says, we need to find a new sponsor. What industries would you target during this time?
That's a great question. There's definitely ones I wouldn't target right now. I would stay away from tourism and airlines and definitely the oil and gas for right now. The ones that seem to be doing fairly well, it would definitely be like a lot of the commercial ocean kind of liners. So those kind of companies are still doing well. The banks are still doing well. I would say that probably a lot of the insurance companies are doing well. Just trying to think of other industries, like anything that would be moving the parcels around. So like the FedExes and Purilators, any of those kind of companies, a lot of the companies that have been able to adapt well. So a lot of the tech companies would be doing very well right now. Yeah, I think like anything on the tourism, restaurants, airlines, cruises, oil and gas, they're hurting right now. So I would definitely stay away from those industries.
That's great advice. All the moving pieces and insurance. Great call.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, fantastic. So our next question's from Vicki. Hello, Vicki. Vicki's in Lethbridge. How would you encourage board engagement if you have several new members that don't yet know the organization very well?
I would offer to do one-on-ones with them and do a little bit of a board orientation online with them. So, maybe even partnering them up with a more experienced board member that's willing to kind of, have virtual coffee with them, every once in a while and kind of answer any of their questions, making sure that they fully understand, kind of checking in with them before any of your meetings or when you're sending some information out. Yeah, I think any of those kind of things, if they have an opportunity to get involved with anything, if you are doing some online things, if they can get involved with that, I think that would be a great idea too. But just having those conversations, ask them why did they join, what are they hoping to get out of it, and then see if you can kind of come up with a creative way to engage them virtually.
That's a great idea. I like the idea of a virtual coffee. And it's true, board orientations are important. I've been doing a lot of orientation pieces with ArtsFest as well. There's been a lot of staff changes in the province right now, so yeah, got to keep everybody up to date. So our next question is from Robert. Is this a good time to approach prospective sponsors?
It is in terms of building the foundation of a relationship. So starting that engagement relationship is definitely a good time if they're open to it. Probably going to be a bit more challenging to approach them for actual money at this stage. It depends on what your ask is and what your relationship is. I'm just thinking, like, so some of them, for example, like they would be able to, there's a lot of organizations that are still giving money out right now, but it's very specific to helping the immediate needs of what is being felt across the country. So if you can help on that side, then yes. Otherwise, I would just really take this time to build those relationships, find the new people that you don't have a relationship with, and again, have that virtual coffee or send information to, any of those kind of things. But it's definitely about building that relationship, not so much on the asking for money right now.
That's great advice. Our next question is from Mary Elizabeth. Hello, up in Edmonton. What is the best communication method to reach out to a potential sponsor during this time?
I would say the phone. Actually, pick up the phone and try and talk to somebody, or find someone that you can connect with. So again, if you're just calling cold to a company, ask them who is the right person to talk to about sponsorship, and then try and get them on the phone, or video conference is fine, whichever you prefer. But definitely that more personal contact. Like, just to give you an example, right now, anybody that we're considering, even if someone gives us a gift that we haven't kind of solicited right now, we're picking up the phone, we're calling them, we're saying thank you. It doesn't matter if they gave us $5 or $500. Like, we're trying to call them and just say, this really means a lot. So having that very personalized approach is going to go a long way right now.
That's great. I always appreciate a phone call. There's many requests for face calls right now, but like, I will take an old school phone call anytime. So our next question is from Catherine Bruce, and she says, you mentioned that you were seeing that sponsors were not there yet being ready to ask for money. So if her team is still in the cultivation and stewardship phase, what are your thoughts about when that might change? And I think timing is tough. I'm wondering maybe if you can speak about like maybe what that transition would look like. Like, if we're transitioning from online and you're doing online coffee, what might those next steps be?
Well, ideally, if you're in that cultivation stewardship kind of part of it, and you're really, you're having those open, honest conversations, you're talking about building solutions together, the sponsor will eventually kind of give you the cues that you need to move forward. And if you think you're there, you can always say, like, is this something that you would entertain as a proposal? Like, would you be open to it if I sent it? And I think that once you kind of build that foundation of relationship, then they would feel comfortable with you and say, no, it's not quite the right time. How about we talk about it in the fall or something like that? So it's almost turning that question on them and asking them, but you don't want to ask that question too soon. Like, you want to make sure that you're truly building a relationship, and not just kind of, let's get to know each other a little bit so I can ask you for money when it feels right. Like, it's got to be a true relationship that you're building, not just kind of getting your foot in the door. So asking them for that. But in terms of when people are going to be open for a general call out for money, I don't know if anybody knows the answer to that. To be honest, I would say that hopefully by the fall, like, everybody will start kind of picking up and getting back to a bit of their usual cycles. But, I don't know that answer for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. Oh, that's great. And our last question, in case anyone else wants to submit questions, is from Rob. And he says, coming out of this, what suggestions would you have to let the public know that we're still in business?
Yeah, so I think that goes back to kind of one of my earlier slides where I was saying that if you're doing something that's different, or even if it's business as usual, but you're able to still do it right now, I think that those are important messages to share. So whether you do it social media, whether you're doing it kind of an email blast or on your website, but right now a lot of the newspapers and radio stations, they're all kind of hurting for some good news pieces too. So I bet you if you reached out to any of your local media channels, that they would be, and you spun it in a way that it was for again, that betterment of society, of community. It's kind of that good news story, or you're offering, programming to a wider audience, whatever it is. I think a lot of the media channels right now are looking for that kind of stuff. So that's a really good way. And think about those media partners as partners that you can build those relationships with now. So if you build those strong networks right now, then when you do get back to normal, then you can still reach out to them and say, like, hey, I just wanted to give you an update. Like, back in operation now. It'd be great if you could help us get that information out to people.
Oh, that's fantastic. We actually just started through Business in the Arts, and we have a new YouTube series where we're telling stories about how organizations are adapting during the pandemic. So to Rob and his team and all the organizations that are here today, like if you have a good news story or you'd like to be able to share with us how you're adapting, we can connect you with our marketing team and make this fancy YouTube video, and you can get some coverage on our blog, and we're more than happy to share your story during their time. So please reach out to your program manager if that's something that's of interest at that time. Fantastic. Oh, we've got another question. This one's from Yumi, and Yumi's wondering, how would you approach a new sponsor you have no contact with in order to start building a new relationship when you don't know yet when you don't know yet when your next how will be, when you are not.
Show.
Yeah.
Okay,
when your next show will be. Thank you. When you don't know when your next show will be and you're not ready yet to make specific asks. So how would you approach somebody you don't know at this time who you want as a future sponsor?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think doing some of those, that research, obviously making sure that the organization that you're trying to approach or someone that you're trying to approach kind of aligns with what you're hoping to do in the future. And then you would just kind of reach out and just say like, hey, you know, we're trying to build a bit of a network of people that you're seeking advice or some input into what you're doing. Like if that's an option, like you could actually ask them to be part of that process of figuring out when the next show is going to be. And so that's one way if that's possible. But if it's not, if you're not able to get them engaged in the actual kind of advice or input into what you're doing, then I would just kind of frame it as honestly as you can and just say, you know, you're trying to just build a stronger network of individuals around in different companies that, you know, when things do return to normal, that you'll have a stronger community. LinkedIn is really good for that. I find that if you reach out to anybody on LinkedIn and send them like a personal message, then for the most part, people are willing to pick up the phone and have a chat with you and just see what you're trying to talk about or what you're interested in talking about. So that's one way to do it.
That's great advice. I think it's you know, so much of Arts Fest is looking and thinking also on what's happening for businesses right now, and the businesses don't know when you're programming next, and the businesses don't know, you know, you might not know when you're programming next or that you're moving online, but to be able to check in with the business, to be able to say, you know, we've got this audience and we're wondering, you know, if we can work together maybe in the future, or just even to check in to see how you can support your local businesses. I think that is a really important piece right now, to be able to start, just even to call to say to your local businesses that you care and you're thinking about them, and is there something, you know, is there a way for you to collaborate to work on something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, this is great. Fantastic. Well, that's it for our questions for today.
Perfect.
So thank you so much for your time, and your presentation has been so helpful, and it's so wonderful to be able to convene and to learn from different people across the country. And I know on behalf of all our participants also, thank you so much for all of your one-on-one mentorships. It's provides such an amazing value for our participants.
Great.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so
thank you.
Last but not least, guys, there's a poll. So I've put up a webinar feedback poll for everybody, so you can complete that. Thank you so much for attending today. I will be sending out the slides to your program managers, so you'll be able to get a recording of this webinar as well as a copy of the slides. We're still developing different webinars, and we'll be announcing our next webinar topic shortly. I'm really excited. There's going to be one in the future on grieving events that have been canceled. I know that sounds funny to say that you're excited about that, but my event with the Calgary Comic Expo canceled a couple weeks ago, and I've been all about event grief. So if you're interested in that topic, that's coming up soon. And yeah, I also just wanted to share with everybody with regards to our How Are You Adapting series. If you do have any interest in participating with that, please just contact your program manager directly and they can send you all the information. And please keep healthy and keep safe, and we'll connect with you guys shortly. Have a wonderful long weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.